"Step away from him, ma'am." Right now, the officer's firm voice cut through the air like a thunderclap. Sarah froze, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Her eyes darted to the boy, the same boy she had called the police on just minutes earlier. But now, something was different. A black SUV pulled up at the curb. The back door opened slowly, and out stepped a woman in a sharp, tailored suit. Her presence was magnetic, her gaze sharp as glass. Her heels clicked with authority on the pavement as she approached. Every step echoed with purpose. "Mom?" the boy said softly, his voice trembling with both relief and confusion. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Mom?" Her mind spun as the woman's eyes locked on hers. Cold, focused, and unwavering. Not a single word was spoken, but in that moment, Sarah knew she had made a mistake. It had started like any other day. Sarah Whitman stood in her kitchen, sipping her morning coffee, scrolling through her phone. She had a habit of skimming the local news, checking for anything unusual. Crime alerts, break-ins, stolen packages. It all fed into her growing paranoia. Her neighborhood, Crestwood Heights, was supposed to be safe. That's why she and her husband had chosen it. Quiet streets, picket fences, neighbors who waved but never lingered too long. The kind of place where everyone minded their business. Or so she thought. Her gaze shifted to the front window. That's when she saw him. A teenage boy, tall, slim, brown skin. Hoodie pulled up, head down, carrying paper grocery bags. He moved slowly, like he had all the time in the world, but his eyes scanned the houses as he walked. Is he looking for something? Sarah tilted her head, watching more closely now. He stopped at one house, glanced at it, then moved on to the next. Her mind started to fill in the blanks, looking for empty homes probably, checking for security cameras, packages left on porches. She glanced back at her phone. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Should I call? No, don't be that person. But what if I don't call and something happens? Her kids were upstairs. Her husband was at work. She was alone. The boy crossed the street, heading toward her side now. Closer. Her heart quickened. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She reached for her phone. 911. What's your emergency? Hi, there's a suspicious person in the neighborhood, she said, keeping her eyes on the boy as he walked closer to her house. Her voice was shaky but firm. It's a young man, maybe 16 or 17. He's black, wearing a hoodie, and he's carrying bags. But he's walking up and down the street like he's looking for something. Is he doing anything illegal, ma'am? No, but I don't recognize him. And this neighborhood doesn't usually have strangers walking around like this, she insisted, glancing nervously toward the stairs where her children were playing. It just doesn't feel right. We'll send a unit to check it out. She hung up, exhaling. Her heart felt like it was doing cartwheels. She told herself it wasn't about race. It wasn't about assumptions. It was about being safe. Better safe than sorry, right? 15 minutes later, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. A police cruiser pulled up slowly, its lights flashing but siren off. The boy was further down the street now, standing at the edge of a driveway, looking at a slip of paper in his hand. Perfect timing, Sarah muttered. She stepped outside, watching from her front porch as two officers got out of the car. They walked toward the boy with that slow, deliberate pace police often used. "Hey, kid," one officer called, his hand resting on his belt. "Can we talk to you for a second?" The boy looked up, confusion flashing across his face. He glanced behind him as if making sure they were talking to him. Yeah," he replied, his eyes darting between them. "Where you headed?" the officer asked, his eyes scanning the bags the boy was holding. "What's in the bags?" "Groceries," the boy said, his voice steady but his eyes wary. "I'm just delivering these to Miss Ortiz. My mom told me to drop them off." "Your mom, huh?" the officer said, stepping closer. "Got some ID on you?" "I'm 15. I don't have an ID," the boy replied, his voice tightening. He lowered the bags slowly, his hands raised in the air, fingers spread. "I'm not doing anything, man." "That's not what we heard," the officer said, glancing over his shoulder. His eyes briefly met Sarah's from across the street. She quickly stepped back inside, heart racing. It all happened so fast. A sleek black SUV rolled down the street like it owned the road. It didn't rush. It didn't need to. The vehicle stopped right behind the police cruiser. The back door opened slowly. Out stepped a woman. She was tall, with smooth, deep brown skin, and she wore a sharp navy blue suit. Her hair was pulled into a sleek bun, and she had the presence of someone who didn't need to raise her voice to command attention. Sarah blinked, trying to place the face. She knew that face. Everyone knew that face. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Number, it can't be her. The officers noticed, too. Their eyes widened, their postures stiffened. One officer leaned over to his partner and whispered something. The woman didn't stop walking until she was right in front of the officers. She tilted her head at them like she was sizing them up. Her gaze shifted to the boy. "You okay, baby?" "Yeah, Mom," he said, his voice barely a whisper. His eyes dropped to the ground, embarrassed. "Mom?" The older officer cleared his throat. Miss Harris, we didn't know." "That's clear," she said, cutting him off. Her eyes flicked to the boy's raised hands. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't yell. She didn't have to. "You want to tell me why you're stopping my son?" she asked coolly, looking from one officer to the other. They both fumbled their words. We got a call about a suspicious person." Her eyes narrowed. "Suspicious?" Her eyes swept toward Sarah's house, locking on her like a hawk spotting prey. Sarah felt her stomach twist. Her breathing grew shallow. Her mind raced. No, 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 this isn't happening." The woman turned back to the officers. Her voice was calm but deadly sharp. "Did you check the bags?" One officer hesitated, glancing at the brown paper bags. "No, ma'am." "Then let me help you," she said, bending down and opening one. Oranges, milk, and cereal spilled out. She glanced up with a raised brow. "Groceries." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. Silence, thick, heavy silence. The woman stood, brushing her hands off. "You two are dismissed. Now." "But ma'am." "Now," she repeated, her eyes locked on them with such intensity that neither officer dared to respond. They walked away, heads low. Sarah sat by the window, her hands shaking. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a headline. "Breaking. Civil rights attorney Maya Harris addresses racial profiling incident involving her son." Her eyes scanned the photo. It was her, the woman in the suit. The same woman who had just stood in front of her house, eyes sharp as razors. Sarah's stomach churned. Her vision blurred with panic. "That's his mom?" Her chest heaved as she leaned against the wall. Her phone slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. She'd made a mistake. A big one. And now the whole world would know. Assumptions can lead to mistakes, but accountability leads to growth. See people for who they are, not who you fear they might be.